Where did you grow up?
I grew up in London until I was 15. We came to Yorkshire. The Germans were bombing London and lots of buildings were getting blown up and people were being killed, and they wanted people to leave London so that if your house was blown up they didn't have to dig for dead bodies. So we came up here because my mother had some family up here. So we came to Halifax.
What did you think of Halifax when you first came here?
I thought it was a nice town and homely. It seemed small after London, but I didn't have much trouble learning my way around.
What was your school like, and did you do any craft lessons there?
We did knitting and sewing, and then we went to another school outside once a week for cookery and laundry. Taught me how to iron and wash. And then I went into the senior school, and as I said, we did the knitting and sewing, and we knitted some baby clothes, little booties and things, to start us on making articles out of sewing. And I made myself a skirt at school. Cost me 50p for the material.
Who did you marry and where did he come from?
Yes, I married in 1953, and I married Zenon. He was a young man, came from Ukraine as a displaced person after the war. He'd had to leave his house and his mum and dad, and he couldn't go back home because the Russians would have arrested them. So he had to stay, and he's still here, thank goodness. After 56 years.
What clothes did you make for your children and how did you make them?
I made everything for them. I used to sew things for them. I even made blankets for the cots and hats and coats. I knitted socks. I knitted jumpers, cardigans. I knitted for Zenon as well, and me. And I'm still knitting. I went in the blanket mill in Sorby Bridge, and I was working in the finishing department as a blanket whipper. And we used to whip blankets, and sometimes I had to sew the tickets on the end of the blanket to say that it was all wool or whatever. But they have blanket stitch then, and there were 3 sizes of blankets, a 60 by 80, 70 by 90 and 80 by 100. We didn't have king size. Everybody was slimmer in those days. They didn't need a king size bed. It was a machine that had 2 needles on, and as it went along, the one needle had a hook, and used to hook the thread to the top and did a chain stitch on the top. And heaven help you if you got your finger in the machine. I got stitched one day, that finger, and they had to push the machine backwards to get me out of 2 stitches. But they said you weren't a blanket whipper until you whipped your finger.